Good day, I'm Jeff Kelly, and this is the UrbanYEG podcast. In this episode, Chan and I sit down with Naheed Shariff. He's the CEO of the Shariff Group. As Naheed says, he was born into business. His parents opened an East African restaurant after coming to Canada from Nairobi, Kenya, and his mother's first job was in Boston Pizza. In 1983, his parents purchased their first Boston Pizza franchise. Naheed himself started in Boston Pizza at the age of 12, and by his 15th birthday, his goal was to become a franchisee by 23, which he achieved. By 2014, the Shariff Group owned and operated 4 Boston Pizza locations in Edmonton. As Naheed speaks about in the podcast, he positioned his family to be able to exit the Boston Pizza brand, and in 2014, they had sold all 4 of their restaurants and now own and operate all 6 Brown Social House locations in Edmonton. His focus on his family, his employees, and his customers have allowed him to create a brand within a brand and a larger family within a corporate structure. In this podcast, Chan and I get a chance to sit down with Naheed and hear his story in his own words, his ups, his downs, his wins, and his losses, and the lessons that he's learned that not only help him to be successful in business, but also as a son, a husband, and a father. Here's our conversation with Naheed. I hope you enjoy. Cool. So we're live. What's up?
I'm just checking that, because I don't know how this thing operates, but I always have this fear of like, you do the podcast
and then it didn't record.
Well, you think it's recording.
It's never happened to me yet.
So it's good.
Yeah, it's
okay.
Good. Yeah, see this red light here?
Yeah, it says record.
That's the
REC.
record button.
Yeah, I see it. It's on.
Yeah.
Okay, hello Naheed.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it. I'm Jeff Kelly. Again, this is the UrbanYEG podcast. I'm here with Chan. Hello, Chan.
Hi.
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 Hi. All right. So Chan and I are here to talk with Naheed. Personally, I don't really know very much about you. Do you want to give us a little bit of intro? Like, obviously there was your bio there, but do you want to just follow up with a little bit about yourself here?
Sure. Let me see. I'm a father of 3. I've got a beautiful family. I run Brown Social House in Edmonton and one in St. Albert. I used to be with Boston Pizza, merged into Brown's. I am a big advocate of this city. I love this city. I'm an immigrant to Canada, actually. I'm from Nairobi, Kenya. My parents came in 1980. This city's been great for us. Farah and I we've been married 20 years this year.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of details we'll get into.
For sure. So, when you came to Canada, what was the first thing that you noticed about Canada that surprised you?
The lack of diversity.
Is that right?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah. It was myself and one other gentleman in my school, and we're the only 2 colored kids in the entire school.
Oh wow. So
yeah.
Was that in Edmonton?
It was in Edmonton. It was Collingwood Elementary.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually surprising to me.
I live near there now.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, you live really close to there, don't you?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I mean, so was there more diversity? You said Nairobi, right?
Yeah, Nairobi, yeah.
So was there more diversity there?
No, we came when I was 5, so I can't relate to that. I mean, I'm giving you my perspective. Starting maybe in grade 2 is when I started to notice that.
Sure, for sure. Okay, well that would make sense. Okay, wow, yeah, because I traveled to China, and I was surprised by the lack of diversity where I was in China. I was in Harbin, it's very far north, and there was not very many people that looked like me there, which for the first time in my life, that was something I never experienced. A very surprising experience.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was strange. I mean, but people wanted to take their photo with me and things like this.
Oh, you're a celebrity.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, it was very peculiar, but it's not the same kind of thing that we're talking about in terms of like lack of diversity here. It's not like people aren't treated like celebrities for the most part.
Yeah.
Right. So, wow. Okay. So you said that you'd owned Boston Pizza?
Yeah, we're a family business. So we had Boston Pizza since the 80s when we arrived in 1980.
Wow.
That was one of my mom's first jobs, was working for the corporate office.
I see.
And so she was in accounts payable and then moved to controller. And in 1981, we bought our first Boston Pizza.
Oh,
and
wow.
so I grew up with that as a background.
Wow. And that was still in Edmonton, eh?
All in Edmonton.
Well,
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Boston Pizza started in Edmonton, right?
You're absolutely right.
Wasn't
So it started with Gus Adjaritas, who is a Greek immigrant with an American name serving Italian food. It was very interesting. That was the original premise for Boston Pizza. It was actually called Boston Pizza and Spaghetti House, is what it was called. Jim and George, who Jim is from the Dragon's Den, bought the company, I believe, in 1983.
I see.
And when they bought the company, they offered my mom a position to move out to Vancouver. But she was so happy with the city that she wanted to stay here. And so we had a family discussion. We have been buying and selling Boston Pizza since.
Holy cow. Yeah. That's crazy because, if she made the decision to leave, things would be a lot different, right?
Very different. Yeah.
Where I grew up, I didn't see a Boston Pizza until, when was it? The first Boston Pizza I saw was sometime in the early 2000s, I think, 2008 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in Pembroke, Ontario, way up north near Ottawa. And we didn't get one in Windsor, where I'm from, for like many, many years after that. It's very surprising you guys like started.
Well, we're a
it out
Western-based
here, eh?
company.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story that you bring that up because in 1999, Far and I got married and we moved to Ontario.
Oh, okay. Whereabouts?
And we moved into Richmond Hill.
Okay, nice.
And I had a restaurant in Vaughan.
I see.
And that was a Boston Pizza. And so we're the second Boston Pizza in Eastern Canada.
Wow. Crazy. I wonder what the first one was.
That was Oakville, Ontario.
Oakville.
Yeah,
Wow.
that was a corporate store.
I see. Wow. So you've been along for the ride quite a bit, eh? Since that's your whole life, eh?
It's, I'm an accountant by trade.
I see.
And both my parents are accountants. So it was an easy transition for me.
Sure.
But so was business. And so I think it was when I was 15 years old that I really realized that's what I want to do. And the perspective I had was I wanted to be a Boston Pizza owner. But what I didn't realize was it wasn't a Boston Pizza owner. It was, I want to be in the restaurant business.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. But what you knew at the time was Boston Pizza.
That's all I knew.
Through your family, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah.
I see. So when did you go to school and where did you post-secondary?
Post-secondary was Grant MacEwan. At the time that I was in school, so around 95, 96, in Grant MacEwan, they had a CMA acceleration program. Okay. So I didn't need to go to U of A to get my BCom.
Oh, wow.
And then end up going to get my chartered accountant degree. So I went to Grant MacEwan. It was a 24-month program. So it was a certification, but it gave you a degree in CMA, which is now CPA. I believe they're all joined. Before I finished my CMA articling in the final exam, I got a call from Jim Treleving. And he said, Naheed, you need to get away from the shadow of your parents. You need to come move to Ontario.
Oh, wow.
And he flew me down there and we took a peek and we spent some time together. And that's what led to my movement to Ontario. And so I put aside finishing that degree.
Wow.
And left for Ontario in 1999.
Holy cow. Right?
Yeah.
How long were you in Ontario?
3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah, it was a very short stint. We had the rights for 6 locations. And unfortunately, the business didn't do well. It was,
Is that right?
Yeah, we opened and it was the slowest sales in Boston Pizza history.
Really?
I think it still is.
Holy cow.
Really, really tough go. I was 23 years old, newly married, and every transition you think you can go through in life, Far and I went through immediately. So we got married in June. We moved in October.
Wow.
The restaurant opened in December.
Holy cow.
Far had just completed her Bachelor of Education and did not have a job. Teachers were on strike.
Oh, man.
So ended up moving there. We had, again, one job. Our business was not doing well. We lived in a condo probably about an hour drive away.
Holy cow.
And it's just everything multiplied. We had no family there. We had no friends there. It was a difficult process.
Rough. So how did you guys make it through that period of time?
I think the key factor was, we grew up together. We've known each other for, I don't mean we grew up together knowing each other through our childhood. I mean, at the tender age of 21, 22, 23, we grew up together.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people nowadays are at home and they have their parents as a background support. And Farah was a tremendous support for me. I had my parents back in Edmonton as well, and it was literally daily phone calls for an hour or 2 hours. How do we do this? What do we do here? I need support and help to manage the business, because I'd never been in a position where the business was failing or not doing well. The brand was successful in Western Canada, and my idea was it would be successful in Eastern Canada.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, at least you had your family and they were experienced in the area that you were involved in. I mean, if they were doing something completely different and you set out to do this on your own, it would be a lot more difficult for you, right? So.
Yeah, the difficulty was I asked them to partner with me.
Oh, I see.
And so that loss, financial, emotional, was tough. A struggle for me as well, because my parents had been through multiple recessions in the 80s. And now here's their son wanting to make something bigger of himself, has dragged them along for the ride. And the ride, is not so nice.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is tough. I couldn't even imagine. I couldn't even imagine that kind of responsibility, having that kind of weight on my shoulders, having other people relying on you in that way. Having your parents being like, okay, well, let's see how this works out, I guess. And, but do you think that that's beneficial for your personal growth? Do you think that that was something that forged you in the fires of that kind of experience per se?
That's a great comment and question. It was difficult. It was very difficult at the time. Difficult on our relationship, my parents and myself relationship. It was difficult on my wife and my relationship. Wasn't about just the finances, because the minute we landed in Toronto, we were in the hole. Every month we were under.
Wow.
But it wasn't about that. It was the emotional struggle of trying to build something and have this dream. And it quickly became a very harsh reality. In hindsight, I look back and I talk about this with my parents, with not regret, but apology. And my dad said to me, in a joking way, he said, it would have been cheaper to go to Harvard. And it's totally true.
Yeah, but you wouldn't have learned
I
as
would
much,
not have learned what I learned in that business. And we had, we chose the wrong site. We were excited about a brand and didn't understand our customer. We didn't understand what they wanted, what they needed, what we could provide, and how we could change and pivot with what that area, the socioeconomic background of that area was. And we opened this Boston Pizza in an Italian neighborhood.
I see. Oh, they're not going to be happy
and you
that.
can't, so there's so many negatives that I didn't understand.
I
and,
see.
The age of 23 is tough because you think you can conquer the world.
Oh, yeah.
And I was excited. I mean, when I was 15, I put on a piece of paper, I will be a franchisee by 23. So subconsciously, before my 23rd birthday, I was a franchisee. What I should have put on that piece of paper is I'll make money at the age of 23. I had worked 2 jobs from the age of 13 onwards. So I had saved a lot of money. My dad didn't believe in debt. All my savings went into my partnership.
I see.
It all went into that Boston Pizza.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I put it all on the line.
Wow.
So risk, a lot of risk. But
can I jump in there?
Yeah, of course.
So, I'm just going to jump in there talking about that, where things aren't going so well, right? So you came to kind of a harsh reality there for you. But I think that part to me is very important for, anyone who's listening, because what I've seen out there is people, there's people on social media right now, you see them like these personalities and you see who they are, but that's kind of like their end. That's who they are now. Like that's their end result. They you might see as someone who's like very successful. Maybe they're on Dragon's Den right now, right? And you see them like, hey, they have millions of dollars. You see them as successful. But anytime I'm looking at someone like that, like I might not even I don't even need to know them as a person, but I'm saying like their whole backstory, but I can look at someone who's who is, say, successful now, but I can know personally that they went through some shit to get there. They didn't just like wake up one day and they were there. And, you know, I understand that and I appreciate that, but I think there's a lot of people who that I've met in my life that they kind of think that, you know, they kind of dream and aspire to do that, but they don't realize that, well, you have to go through some shit to get there. It's like it's that learning and that experience and that turmoil is a kind of what helps you to become who you are and like helps you to take on the next challenges to end up where you maybe are today, right? But I think, you know, and I guess for me, I always like to, I would say like more than the successes, when I'm like talking to someone who I feel is successful, more than the like hearing like, hey, you know, I'm making this much money today, I'm doing like, I own these businesses. It's like, for me, I'm always interested in like, what shit did you go through? And, you know, you just answered that for me because I didn't know that part about like, you know, I know that you and Farah did live in Ontario, but I didn't know about that, you know, the kind of the reasoning for it and like the Boston Pizza situation out that way. But that's helpful to me that, but you know, that it's helpful because you can know that, hey, people went, you know, you can go through some shit, but you can get past it. You know, it makes you stronger. It kind of builds you up to who you are today. And I think it really does help you to handle the next challenges that are going to come into your life, because it's not, if everything was easy, you wouldn't have the appreciation that you have right now about where you are and like, you just wouldn't have that contrast. But, you know, but I think everybody does go through those challenges, but sometimes I think it's just very important to know, you know, especially hearing from someone who I think is quite successful that they went through some shit too. So yeah, but I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, failure is okay. Failure is okay, and I think people need to understand that vulnerability. And I went through shame. I mean, I came back. It was really difficult selling a business at a loss and having this loss be part of a loss for your entire family. So not only for me, because financially, that wasn't the issue that I could pay back that debt. It was the debt that I owed to my parents for supporting me to get to that position. So I think failure, and I've had lots of failures. Failures are common, and I think you learn from them and you grow from them, and they change you as a person, and it's about evolution. And you're absolutely right, Chan. You get stronger, you get faster, and you understand things quicker. And anybody who says that they haven't failed I think they're a liar. You know, they don't tell you the truth. So every business person, every educator, everybody, it fails. They always fail.
I think that, you know, I think that's important to hear as well, that, you know, I think this whole social media world right now, what is showing you is that, that vulnerability thing and like people, Instagram right now, you know, social media it's about your best self. They're showing the highlight reel, right? But in doing so, I think it affects society negatively, where people don't want to talk about their failures though. Right? They think that it's a bad thing to air it out, to let people know, you know, that you feel like you failed something, or just to share it. And then you keep it inside, and they just think it's like a terrible thing. So, but yeah, I just think, you know, I think as a society, we need to change the way that we're looking at that. And I think I watched something that Will Smith, he put out, and it made a lot of sense. He talked about failing forward. And he said fail, and it's actually Farah who shared this. So thank you, Farah, if you're listening. So she shared it, and it was Will Smith talking about, you know what, fail. It's okay to fail often, but fail forward, right? But I think that's important for anybody who's listening to this.
Yeah, I agree. Like obviously, I haven't been in a position where I've had to, like, I've purchased a franchise, gone into business, and been in a similar position. However, I think the feeling of failure, the feeling of shame, I think that's probably a universal thing. I think regardless of like the level of what you're going through, everybody experiences that in a similar way. I think like they might think that it's the worst thing that's happening to them ever at the time, but you can't necessarily compare that to somebody else's experience, right? So just being open about that and just saying, yeah, being truthful. Like you said, like if anybody says they haven't failed, they're not telling the truth. There's no way you could not be moving forward without failing. Like failing it's not only okay, it's necessary. It's probably one of the most important things because it teaches you humility. It teaches you to pay attention. You learn the fastest when you have something to lose, versus if everything is going constantly well, then how much are you really growing? You know what I mean? You're not being forced into a position to adapt and change. So yeah, I think what you're saying is super important. And yeah, like Chan said, it helps me because I know I go through, but I will say that what you're talking about does give me perspective. That definitely gives me perspective because yeah, the consequences of my failures at this point in time are not that drastic. Even though I might feel like, to me, they might feel like they're the worst thing in the world, they are definitely not as bad as they could be, right? And yeah, to be able to go through that, give it some perspective, and to be able to say, okay, what is it? What am I going to learn from this? What is this teaching me? And like you said, become faster at that. Because if you can go through that cycle of like, okay, well, something went wrong, that didn't go well. If you can shorten that gap between your wallowing in that experience and you're coming out the other side of that experience, then you're going to be moving forward just that much faster. But you have to be in that position and experience it in order to understand what you need and how you need to navigate that place. Yeah.
Part of accepting that is verbalizing it too.
Right.
That was one of the hardest things, was telling that story or having a conversation with my wife and my parents and saying, I failed, and how do I reset and change and pivot to do things better and faster and stronger?
Right. Yeah, I would agree. Like, I mean, verbalizing it and saying it out loud to somebody is like admitting it, and your mind is like, oh, well, if we don't say it, then it doesn't really exist. And then as soon as you say it, you're like, oh man, and then you have to accept like full responsibility for that and everything that comes with it. But I think at the end of the day, you feel better because then you're able to actually acknowledge it for what it is and then move from it. Because if you never get to that point, you never really deal with it. You never really, it's almost like mourning if somebody was to pass away. You never really come to terms with it. You never really fully accept it. So you never really actually move on from it in a healthy way. Yeah. So what happened after that? Like when you came back and, cause obviously you've done very well for yourself since that time. So what changed, I suppose, from that experience? What did you learn from that experience that you've been able to bring forward?
We had Maya in 2002.
I see.
And in 2003, it was January. So we had Maya June of 2002. And that was the point that I made the decision with Farah for us to move back to Edmonton. And my parents had existing businesses here. We had Boston Pizza, so thank goodness we had that carried, was able to carry the weight of the loss. And so when we came back in 2003, in January, my mom's business partner in one of the locations said, I'm kind of tired. I want to go on a extended leave. So could you run the store? And they had, we were up to 3 locations at that time. And so she said, I have an opportunity for you. Would you like to take it? And so I took that opportunity because I was coming back to nothing.
Right.
And, you know, when we moved back, I think the teachers were on strike again for Farah. So with every child we ended up having, she would get a new designation. So she got her master's and then she went back and got her PhD. And so she's pivoted and she's had teaching positions and people have sought her out. So it was kind of neat. Well, not neat at the time. I mean,
right.
Scary at the time because it's always about financial difficulty. And so 2003, I think I sulked for about 6 months. I was really down on myself. I didn't want to go anywhere or meet people or talk with people. Again, that shame, I couldn't, it was eating me alive. And my younger brother also worked with my parents. And so that made it an easier transition back because they opened their arms up again and they were like, just come home and let's all take care of each other.
Right.
So what I learned from that is, how do I take that number that I lost and get that back as fast as possible for them, and then double that or triple that to take them to a different place, and in turn do that for myself. So that was the factor, was that big number. We lost $1.3 million by 2003. So just to give you perspective again, in 2003, what is that worth now? So that was it was a daunting number.
No doubt. I mean,
at that.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I can't even fathom that.
Yeah. So I we had a payback time frame that we developed and how we were going to do it with operating our businesses here. And so you fast forward from 2003 to 2014, we had 4 Boston Pizzas. We had a few shopping centers. We got into real estate development.
Wow.
We did a whole bunch of things. And we ended up buying another Boston Pizza in that meantime, renovated that, and we took our locations to a different level. And the objective there was, in 2009, I started to feel like, Boston Pizza was a great brand. It would be celebrating 50 years. And it was the time to be at the top of the roller coaster. And at some point, roller coasters always dip.
For sure.
And
I think we're seeing
I'm not emotionally invested in business. I am with the people that we work with, but not in the business itself. And so the conversation we had with my parents was 2014 will be the sale date. We knew that in 2009.
I see. Yeah. Oh,
When I say we, it wasn't a joint conversation. It was me coming to them and saying,
right.
this is what I foresee.
Yeah.
And my dad kind of looked at me. He's like, yeah, man, you foresee stuff in 1999, and look how that turned out. So how's this any different? We have really clear, honest conversations as a family, and we're very open. We're very open with each other. And I said, I think this is where it's gonna be the time. And you know what? In 2009, my parents sat with me and they said, done. You make the decision and let's make it happen.
Wow.
So 2011, I started the process.
Oh, wow.
To ensuring that the companies were strategically placed in the right location with no debt, where we needed them to be. And then I would just work backwards. Yeah. And in 2014, we sold.
Wow. Crazy. So you sold 4 Boston Pizza restaurants?
Yeah, we sold our restaurants. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So you made that decision in 2009.
2009.
Right? So 2009 was when the economy was just in the middle of that.
It was picking up.
7 was the killer. 7,
Correct.
8.
Yeah.
And actually we restructured, and in 9 was our highest profit ever, because I restructured in 2008. So what I learned in 99, 2003 was, how do you run a lean company and how do you renegotiate contracts?
I see.
From the age of 13, I was sitting with my mom while she was negotiating bank loans.
Wow.
So I knew all of that stuff. I think I needed that failure to take me to a place, and then the confidence to grow with the brand. And I sat on every board. I sat on advertising. I sat on strategy. I sat on vision. They had a 10-year plan. I knew all of that. I went to Napa Valley with their executive chef.
Wow.
We did black box challenges at the Culinary Institute of
That's
America.
cool.
They gave me so many opportunities. Boston Pizza really, my learning was so advanced, and what they provided me with. And then it just got to a point where it's like, sometimes you have to move forward.
Yeah.
And you realize that that's not the place for you anymore because you've outgrown it.
I see.
Yeah.
So were you looking for... So you were like you said, you were concerned about that, it rolling over the edge of that high, like you were saying, on the top of the roller coaster. That was one thing.
Yeah.
But you're also saying that you outgrew it. Were you looking for something more challenging by this time?
I recognize that the brand had its complications, and with a brand that has just short of 400 restaurants, which I'd estimated by that time in $1 billion,
right,
means you become a slow-moving machine. And when you become a slow-moving machine, and there's a lot of franchisee dissension. So I had a restaurant, and within 1 mile away from me was another franchise owner. And so I wasn't really fighting the Kelsey's, Montana's, Eastside Mario's. I was fighting like the guy that I'm supposed to be a comrade with. We're supposed to be together to win the battle of restaurants, and that was the guy I ended up fighting with.
Do you think that's, well, I mean, I don't know a whole ton about business, but do you think that is by design that's the case? Because if you own a business and then you franchise it, well, if I can have these guys compete, they're going to make the stores better and I'm going to profit because it's my company name on that.
Potentially. I don't think that was their intention.
I see.
I think their intention was, as any franchise, is to grow the brand and get as many restaurants as you can out into the Canadian market or the North American market. And the repercussions of that were there. If you look at every Boston Pizza, there's a McDonald's next to every Boston Pizza. So there's about 38 Boston Pizzas in Edmonton and area.
I see.
That's a considerable amount of
Holy
restaurants.
cow.
Now that I've given you that number.
Yeah.
And they were all struggling for the same guest.
Yeah, that's rough.
You know, so our way of fighting that back in 2008 and 2009, part of my strategy was to create a brand within a brand. So we were known as the Shariff Group of Boston Pizzas within Boston Pizza.
Gotcha.
So I had to delineate who we were and the service we gave.
Wow.
As opposed to the service other Boston Pizzas gave. And so I didn't choose to do battle verbally. I chose to do battle by providing this different service model, giving back to the community and showcasing what our team was and what they did for people.
Wow. Yeah, that's I couldn't imagine, like, but being in that position, you have to be creative like that. You can't just be, well, you can, I mean, but if the position that you're in where you want to see it be successful, you want to be able to help it be like financially viable for your family to help pay back that loss, right? When you're in that position, you have to be creative like that, because it's not like it's your own thing. You can't just be like, oh, we're going to change the logo and we're going to change the colors and it's going to be this whole no, you have constraints on you that you have to operate within, and you're operating, like you said, 38 stores. There's 38 stores.
There's 38 stores, and we had 4 of the 38.
Right. So you have to find a way to differentiate yourself by being similar to other stores in that market. That's
so my comment was, a Caesar salad is a Caesar salad.
Right.
How do you differentiate yourself putting that Caesar salad on the table? It's the conversations we have at the table.
It's gonna be
how you feel when you walk in. It's the atmosphere. It's the lighting.
Sure.
It's how you're recognized. It's that I know the name of your dog. I know the name of your kids. I know the name of your wife. And when you come in, I actually know what you drink and what you eat.
Wow.
So our team did such a phenomenal job of that. It wasn't us. It was this gospel, this word was synonymous with all of our locations. They all, and there was nothing to buy into. It was, this is who we are. This is just what we do. We're a mom pa operation with a brand name on it.
I see.
That's what we pay franchise fees for.
Yeah. That's almost like, it's hospitality, right? That's like, it's like almost like a hotel. You know what I mean? You're adding something that people would not necessarily expect when they walked into a Boston Pizza, right? And that would differentiate you.
But it's simple. It's hospitality 101. Like you said, I mean, that is like the basic. What do you do when someone comes to your house? And that's what we used to say. It's like, when someone comes to your house, how do you treat them? Just do the same thing you would at home.
See, and that's a good point. But I think, like, probably, again, I'm not in your position. I don't have the experience you do, but I think in like our society, in the way things are so fast, that I think things like that are the things that people leave behind. People are concerned about like the product and just how fast you can move product and the price and location and all the aspects of a business that are not really focused on the people, because there's just so many people, and especially if you own a franchise, like people are going to come to a Boston Pizza. Like you still would get clients, but you're not going to get the kind of clients or the quantity of clients that you could get if you did what you did, right?
Yeah.
But I think especially with something, if like I had the money and I walked up and I bought a Tim Hortons tomorrow, turnkey walked in and was like, oh, I own a Tim Hortons, it will just chug along without me doing a whole lot to that. However, if I choose to put in the work like you did, then I could see that grow and develop into something that would be differentiating myself from other owners in the franchise. But I don't think most people think like that.
No, I think they're okay with status quo.
Correct.
Because they get a check
Right.
at the end of the year, and a lot of the Boston Pizza owners had been in it for years, and so we knew that capability of selling would be like a 24-hour decision for someone, and it was. We announced it to 2 individuals, and within 24 hours, I had a check.
Is that right?
It was so fast.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but we knew that's where the brand was, and the loyalty that the people in the brand already had.
Thing. Yeah.
So, that transition piece and wanting to change into something else, I wanted a youthful, agile company, one that could pivot very quickly,
right?
One that didn't talk about money and finances are great,
sure,
but it's not always about the bottom line. It's about delivering this great product to the table, and the great product doesn't come out of a bag, that comes out of a freezer. And so that was the idea of moving forward with something else that you would sit and something new to be proud of. And we all evolve, and that was part of the evolution of who we are and a brand that we wanted to associate ourselves with.
Right. Wow. Yeah. So you position yourself very well to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's crazy. Like, I am very glad to be talking to you, because I love to see that, to have that insight. I mean, I just have no insight into that world at all. And it would be crazy just to have, like, a camera over your shoulder going through all of this and being like, seeing that and being there. It would just be nuts. But yeah, this is as close as I'm gonna get. But yeah, that's crazy. I think it's very interesting and super exciting. I like learning about all that stuff. I like learning about business. I like learning about how companies move and transition and develop themselves and differentiate themselves. I find that very interesting. But I've never been able to speak to somebody who's actually been in the trenches in the way that you have. Yeah, it's really cool. So you decided to sell, you positioned yourself in a good place to be able to do that quickly and easily, and have grown the value of your brand, like your personal brand, like you said, your family brand rather.
Correct, yeah.
In the 4 stores that you had, when you had sold it. So this is your family making that decision to sell. Did you have a plan for what was going to come after that? Because you were, like you said, you were pretty sure that was going to happen fairly quickly.
Yeah, I'm a strategist. So what I learned from 99 to 03 was, and actually from Lululemon, to be honest, I did a I Goal You workshop with my wife, Farah. And part of that was taking your 10-year goal or your 10-year vision and doing a 10-year, a 5-year, and a 1-year. Actually working backwards.
Right.
A lot of people work forwards.
Sure.
So begin, I think it's Stephen Covey, with the end in sight or the end in mind. And that's what I did. And so I said, this is the timeline. This is how we're going to do it. This is when we're going to do it. And so in 2015, we opened up our first Brown Social House. When we sold in 2014, I had a 2-year non-compete with Boston Pizza.
Oh, really?
And they held me to that non-compete. I got a lot of nice letters from their legal team reminding me that it is what it is. You learn a lot. But we were prepared for that. My dad did not have a non-compete. We had purchased all of his shares out in 2012, so he was free and clear.
I see.
And so we opened our first Browns in February of 2015. Our next one in June of 2015.
Wow.
Our next one in March of 2016. Our next one in July of 2016.
Holy cow.
Our next one in July of 2017. Our next one in July of 2018.
Holy cow.
And we had a very aggressive growth strategy. We knew exactly where we wanted to be and how we wanted to get there. And so now we have 6 locations.
Well, the experience that you had in building the Boston Pizzas that you had into what they were before you left, you just basically took those lessons, maintained that momentum, and threw that into something.
Well, and the beauty is that we were the ground troops. So we were the ones who were bringing that brand first to market in Edmonton. It didn't exist in Edmonton.
I see.
So what we learned was the complete opposite of what we did at Boston Pizza. And what Boston Pizza did is, like Tim Hortons, is you advertise. We just opened our first location and went.
Yeah, I didn't see when I. Where was your first location?
Windermere.
Windermere, right. So I've been there a couple times, but I had never heard of it. I had never seen any advertising for it, but it was busy. It was packed. There was
All purposefully done.
Of course, and that's a very smart way of going about it, because it's almost like if I hear about something from a friend and they're like, "Hey, you gotta check this place out. You gotta try this place. Try their food, have some drinks, and just hang out." If I hear that from a friend, I'm going to be way more likely to consider that person's opinion, obviously, than if it's just like, "Hey, come try Brown's Social House. It's cool," on TV or something. I'll be like, "Oh man, come on." It's just going to be, to me, it's just going to be another corporate type of thing, and they're trying to sway my decision. Whereas definitely going through the way that you did it is very smart, because everybody who was anybody I knew about Browns before I knew about Browns, and I was like, this place is bumping, this place is very busy, and I have not seen any advertisements.
No, we don't.
For that
we
whatsoever.
do not advertise. It's a four walls marketing strategy.
It's very good.
So the team that we have, that we've developed since day one, has been unbelievable. To open up 4 restaurants in 2 years,
That's crazy.
is a feat in itself.
No doubt.
So the accolades belong to them. I'm vision and strategy, and their execution.
I see.
It's a really cool synergy.
It's got to be a lot of fun though to see that grow and develop, and especially like you said, coming through this position where you had dealt with loss and you had dealt with all of this, like feelings of guilt and everything, coming back to Edmonton, to be in the position where you're opening 6 stores, and you guys are on the forefront of that brand in Edmonton, right? In Canada, correct?
Well, the brand has actually got 78 locations across Canada.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And this is what I mean. We don't talk about it.
I see.
I'm a firm believer in not. You made mention to humility.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned from Boston Pizza. When I was at Boston Pizza, it was all about, I own Boston Pizza.
Right.
Look at me.
Right.
Look at what I have.
Right.
And you learn to strip that all away, because it's not about me. It's about providing an experience and a place that people go and they're relaxed and they have fun.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do. We don't say we're better than so and so. Another word we use is co-opetition. We like to work with all of our other competitors in an environment where we respect each other, and that pie is very large, and let's all share in it.
For sure. I mean, geez, if you can have 38 restaurants of Boston Pizza in the city, you can definitely do well with 6 Browns in this city.
Soon to be 7.
Is that right? Wow. Awesome. That's crazy. No, that's very cool stuff. I think that when I first met you, it was at the Yellowhead Brewery. We were at a YEG Fitness thing, I think.
Yeah.
And Chan introduced me to you. That was the last time I had seen you, actually. And it came up. I don't know if it was Chan that mentioned. I think it was Chan that mentioned that you, or I asked you, I think, and you said that you own Browns, and I was like, wow, that sounds lucrative, right? But that was all I knew about you. That was an NC. Like Chan said earlier, talking to somebody like this and having this kind of conversation gives me perspective and understanding in a way that if it was like, oh, hey, I just met you and I know that you own Browns. It's like, wow, I can't talk to you. Like, what would I have to say to you?
Really? You feel like that?
Well, yes. Right? But that's just because of, I don't know what it is. It's some social hierarchy type thing that, I tend to put myself in, being as to, this person has learned way more than I have. The quality of this person's problems are so much greater than where my issues are. What what kind of time would I be giving to this person if we were to talk? I would be taking something from them, not necessarily like sharing something with them, right?
And I would tell you it's the opposite.
Is that right?
100%.
How so?
Because I love talking to people.
I
think that what you're sharing with me, I felt in the past too. How can I sit with Jim Treleving until I sat with Jim Treleving? And I learned not about the differences that we had or the amount of money he had, and how it was the commonalities and the failures and the issues we had. We had the very same issues. Yeah, different on a different scale, but they're the same problems. And I was reading an article about, it was about the most successful people in the world and what differentiates them from other people that are trying to become that successful. And I think it was talking about billionaires. And it was that they take the time to learn from other successful people or spend time listening and talking to other successful people. And honestly, that's a big factor, even for me, to listen to people's failures and their successes. So when I do that, and it doesn't matter what you may consider small, may be such a feat that I can't accomplish. And I've struggled with a lot of things. I lost my brother a year and a half ago.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it you know, that is, grief is, it's a really difficult thing to deal with. And so I ended up talking to people that have gone through things like that. That's not the first person that passed away in my life, but someone that close. And so listening even to my parents talk about the grief of losing my brother was so powerful for me, or my wife talking about it was so powerful, or my kids explaining their perspective of the loss of their uncle gave me different perspective. And I learned from my kids. So, that created success for me and an understanding for how I need to deal with my grief. I would have never seen a therapist until someone told me, this is how I resolve that. So there's things I think we can learn from anybody.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I'm just going to share something quickly. One of the reasons why I wanted yourself, Naheed, to be on this podcast, and I just kind of wanted to share your story and who you are with our UrbanYEG folks, is I think you're the type of person that, you have traits and things about you that I aspire to be. So, in the future, I see myself as having a very successful business. Like I see myself having a fairly large business, in the future. But I look at some of the other people that I've talked to in business, and they're all stressed out. They have egos. They're just, some of them are just not very nice people to be around. However, when I look at you, you exude the kind of confidence that I would like to have, now and in the future. And you have the humility that I would like to have now and in the future. And, just to go on that humility, like I'll tell you a story. There was, I knew that you had the Shariff Group, and at that time, this is like a couple years ago, I thought hey, well, the Shariff Group is into he does business consulting, he owns properties, and he's just, but I didn't know that you own Browns, and I knew that you own the Boston Pizzas, but it was at Farah's 40th birthday, and I remember this moment. I was in the washroom with and you had walked in, and I was talking to you, and I said, hey, this is a great birthday that you put on for Farah here, and I'm having a good time, and I said, it's really good food. You guys got I remember I said, I was talking to your chef there, the guy who's cooking, and I said, he's cooking really good food. I really enjoy it. And I said, so and I said, I noticed that they had a logo for Browns or something. I said, did you hire these guys from Browns to cater? And he's like, he was like, no, I just asked them to come. And I mean, I said, I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, I own Browns. I'm like, get out of here. I'm like, so he said, no, and he was like, you said, I own Browns, and I own many of them in the city. I'm like, get out, and I was like, what? I didn't know that. And, to me, that was it's something that was memorable for me, because you're someone who has all the success, but you're not out there blasting it like on social media saying like, hey, you know, look at me, look at me, look at me, which is exactly the type of guy that, you know, that's who I want to be, like, and who I see myself as now, where I'm not the type of guy, for whatever successes I have, I'm not out there blasting it because I don't feel like I need to, but I really appreciated that about you, that it's like we had to have that conversation in the washroom for me to actually know that you were the owner of Browns. And it's like, you know, but it's, you know, to me, that's hugely important, that just to know that you can be quite successful, like very successful, and you don't need to have a huge ego. You don't need to be flashy and, you know, show people what you got. As a matter of fact, and that's why, like, and I'll mention this part. Like, I think that's why when I was first approached you to be on this podcast, you were wanting like, you were like wanting Farah to be on here or something. And I was like, no, you're the guy that I need, because I think that it's that humility. I think you're like, you know what, I think you just, it wasn't something that you, it's almost like you're more comfortable, like, you know, be a part of something else, and like, rather than like, it's all about you or something. Right. And that's, I think that's a huge, it's a great quality to have, that it's like, you know what, it's not about you. Like, it's not about yourself. And like, you would rather be learning about other people and like talking to other people and whatnot. And, you know, so I think that's one of the huge reasons why I wanted you to be featured on this podcast. Right. But there's, I have a couple of questions for you, that these are coming from me, but I think like the UrbanYEG audience would appreciate, hearing this. So, I'm just looking at a couple here. So, okay. So this one kind of pertains to where you are right now. So at this moment in time, and correct me if I'm wrong here, as a business owner, I think you're at a place in your life where you're no longer concerned about your financial security on a day-to-day basis. And what I mean by that is you're probably very confident that your bills are going to be paid off, like, you know, your ability to pay your bills next month and the following month, like you have a good ability to do that. And you're able to save the money that you want to save. You're able to go on the vacations that you want to go on to. And, you know, without having to worry about, do I have money when I come back from this vacation, right? But I think, you know, anyone who's looking to build their own business. So I'm talking about like, so your freelancers out there, your photographers, videographers, graphic designers, anyone who's kind of like up and coming, they're starting their own business and they're in their early years. I think these folks, and you know, I'm sure you can relate to this. These folks in their early years, they are concerned about their finances and their, you know, because of about the revenue that's coming in. And it affects their day-to-day life. So, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there's like 5 or 6 of them, and one of them is talking about safety and security. And I think that's where, like, and the safety and security talks about like your employment situation, money, you know. And I think like for most people who are starting their business, I think they're still in that second level, but I think, you know, that's what they're kind of concerned about today. So, but it's hard to operate, I think, from that level where you're like, if you're concerned about your revenue, or like, am I going to be able to pay the bills next week or like next month because I'm a freelancer? That's a hard place to operate from, right? So they're kind of focused on worrying about that. But my question to you today is, where you are today, you know, like I think you're at a different level on that Maslow's hierarchy. What do you worry about today?
I worry about the world my kids will live in. I worry about how they'll affect change as they have kids. I worry about my grandkids. I don't have any yet, but I worry about them. I worry about my parents. And then none of it is from a financial standpoint.
Right.
Not because I'm saying I have enough money to last generations, but because there's so many more important things to do in this world and important ways to make a difference. And so the conversation we have with our children, Farah and I, over dinner, with my parents, with her parents, are how do you make a difference every day now and every day in the future? And I remember going to a Lululemon retreat, and we were tasked with creating a mission statement. And my mission statement was to unleash my children on this world. So the objective is for them to do things that will create change. That's what I worry about.
I think that's amazing. You know, that's about, it's about your ability to make a difference in this world. Is about your children's ability to make a difference in this world. It's about making the world a better place, you know? And I think I think that's a great place to be in. Like that you're, for me, you know, with UrbanYEG, why I started UrbanYEG, that was the whole thing. It's not about money. And that's why, like, we're volunteer based in UrbanYEG. So it was never about the money. You know, for us, it's like, we want to make a difference in this world. And that's where we're spending our time now. Right. So,
I'm giving you my perspective today.
Right.
If you ask me when I was 16, my dad's objective for me was, I don't ever want you to worry about money. They came from a family that gave them secondhand clothes. His family had nothing. My parents came to Canada with nothing. They had 3 jobs each. So as I was growing up, I watched this. We would never go out to restaurants. Nowadays, people take that for granted. They order $4 pops. My dad said, don't order pop at a restaurant. I know what that costs, the real cost. I'll buy you a 2-liter at home. So, you know, I grew up in a place where credit card debt was non-existent. In fact, my dad said, please don't get a credit card. So when Far and I moved to Ontario and I had the business, we'd buy liquor from our supplier with a credit card. And when I went to apply for a credit card at the age of 21, and I had cash in the bank, they didn't give me a credit card. The credit card limit was $500. Now, Farah had, she was a newly graduated university student. She had a higher credit limit on a credit card because she already had debt for her tuition. And so we used her credit card as opposed to my credit card. So it's like this world puts us in a position to create debt, right? Materialism is okay. Eating out every day is okay. And I'm not saying it's not, or it is. That's everyone's perspective and what they want in their life. But 16 years old, I started putting RSPs in the bank because of my dad. So there's so many things that he taught me or he did for me, which I'm doing for my kids, that will take that white noise of financial stability or financial worry out of the equation. It's exactly what you said. Because a lot of people worry about that so they can't concentrate on the things that they can create and do and make, because they're so worried about these other things.
That's right. Yeah. No, and that's, I think that's, I think it is a big hurdle for those who are kind of starting off in the business early, like as a freelancer. Is that it is a barrier to be self-employed, right? It's but once you, absolutely, if you've got your financial security down, then that's where you can start doing bigger things. Like you're not worried about money anymore. You can start thinking about, you can start really creating and having a bigger impact, right? But you know, I appreciate that, you know, just hearing that from you, that it's possible, you know, like you can, you're proof of that, right? That like there's many other people who are in that situation now where they're just not at, they're not in that second category of like thinking about that safety and security of financial security, right? And I think that it's just it's inspirational to know that you can move, you know, beyond that, right? So another question I had here. I think this is really like the last question for myself. I don't know if Jeff, maybe you can close this off, but this is, I think, important for some of the maybe some of the younger guys out there. So there's a ton of young people out there that I'm seeing out there, and I think social media paints it in part of the problem is social media. It's kind of like they ingrain this idea that, you know what, you should be chasing money. You know, that money will solve a lot of things. And but what I'm seeing is that there's lots of young people out there chasing money, thinking that it's going to do something for them, or like it's going to provide some kind of happiness or satisfaction in their life. But I wanted to know from your perspective, what would you say to those people? You know, you're on the other side of it. Like you've made it. Like, finances is like, that's not your concern anymore. And you know, like, just from your perspective, what would you say to these folks that are chasing that money, that thinking that it's going to do something for them?
I think financial stability is important. It's very important. Do I still worry about it? Yeah, because, you know, business and what you own can never be just the same always. It'll always change. Food changes, businesses change, consumers evolve. Artificial intelligence is one of the things that people are talking about now. How does that affect that? You know, we talk about what we're well known for in Alberta is now slowly deteriorating. So everything changes. I think you have to be able to pivot and move with that. And if you do what you love, money will follow. It really will. But you have to do it wholeheartedly. So don't do something just with the only thing in mind being financial stability. Some people will do that, and it's a means to an end for a period of time. And that's, I mean, you know, I went through that. I had to do certain things and work a certain way to get to a certain point to pay off that debt level, for me to feel good about myself and regain my confidence and then build something further. But I think people need to understand that in this day and age, money comes and goes, and it actually should be recirculated. We haven't talked about that yet. So that recirculation of money is whether it's through charity, it's through business, it's through any other form and means. Your money's not meant to be grasped in your hand or tight stuck in your bank account. It's meant to move. And when you move that, more will be circulated to you. And I know it sounds spiritual about money, which is really weird, but I honestly believe that's a big factor too, is that you have to be willing to let things go. Your emotions are part of that. Your shame, your vulnerability. As you talk and look at the conversation we're having today, we're learning about each other. And I feel like my heart becomes more full and my mind becomes more full as we have these conversations. And so I don't need to be filled with material things when I have things like this, or conversations like this. Right.
100%. You know, I 100% believe what you're saying there. And I've experienced it for myself. It's kind of like when you hold on to something, especially say money, if you're holding on to it, and I read this as well, in a book, and I think that it's something that's, it's maybe, yeah, it's not talked a lot about. It's about that recirculation. So it's like, it's kind of like, well, you got to let go to grow. Well, it's like, it kind of has to do with like the universe. The universe is always flowing. You can't stop the universe. And one of those things is like, you know, if you want more money in your life, well, what do you have to do? Well, you can't hold on to it. You have to recirculate it, you know, whether it may be like, helping somebody out, charity, things like that. But then the interesting part about all that is it's like the more charitable you are, you're getting other things back you get other things in your life that are, you know, they come your way, you know, because you're not holding on to something. And you're right. I mean, that's the first time I've heard this as well, like from yourself, about same thing goes with emotions. You know, what happens when you hold on to your emotions? It you know, it's something that it can affect you negatively. But if you let go, then you free yourself, you know. But that's you know, thank you. That hits me right here.
Yeah, and I think for me, I'm only just now actually discovering a lot of these things for myself, right? So just, you know, being able to talk about things, being able to let things out, being able to be honest with people about where you're at, things like this, and not feeling insecure about those things, because understanding through like conversations like this that, well, I'm not alone in those things. Other people have been in similar situations and circumstances. I mean, Obviously, I have not been in the circumstances you've been in, but that does help me feel, like Chan was saying, a little bit more like I'm able to handle it. You know what I mean? And if I want to talk about things, I can talk about things with people. Yeah. And yeah, I've made mistakes with especially with my finances. Like I have credit card debt. I am in debt, and I'm trying to get out of that place now, because only recently have I really been able to open my eyes up to where I was when I was younger and the mistakes that I've made. And yeah, like you said, like financial security, that's important. Being able to be like, you can only feel secure and not have to worry about money when you actually don't have to worry about money. If you're like, oh, well, I don't worry about money, but there's problems there, well, that's going to catch up with you, right? And definitely 100%, like if you want your kids, if you're worried about how impactful your children are going to be in the world, well, definitely something that you don't want them to have to be concerned about and stressed out about is where their next meal is going to come from, or where they're going to live, and if they're going to be like safe and secure when they're sleeping. You need money in order to be able to do that, but in order to get to that point, you have to be able to work through those things, make decisions, learn from your mistakes, and work towards that. Like you said, like have a plan and work backwards from that. But that's not going to happen if you're pretending about it. If you're like being insecure and you're trying, every single success that you make, you're going to yell about it all over because you want people to think that you're a different person or what have you. Or if you're not willing to be open and vulnerable about your experiences and your failures. Because like you said, being able to voice it, right? Being able to actually speak that to somebody, it takes the power away from it in your mind, and it gives you the power over it, because now you've taken it out of your head and you're holding it in your hand in front of you and showing it to somebody else, which is tough. That's a vulnerable place to be. But when you're doing that, then you can actually see it for what it is, instead of not really being able to see it at all and just having some weird underlying dissatisfaction and guilt and shame and all that stuff bubbling below the surface, right? So when you're in a place like that, then, and you've been able to get to where you are now because you've been able to do that consistently and learn from that and have a support system, people you can talk to. Like you said, your family's very open, and you guys are able to talk about things honestly about where you are, and your wife and your family and your parents and your kids and everything. That's an amazing place to be. And that's only like, that's why I was like, I guess that comes back to what I said before, is you probably needed to go through that experience in order for it to really show you what was important and show you like, well, this is what can happen when things go wrong. You're okay. You're going to be all right. But now you have to make decisions. And especially like you said, your child, you're making decisions now that are bigger than yourself and give you not the motivation, but the inspiration to be able to pursue those things confidently and honestly, and without having to say, well, I am this person. Like you said about when you were in Boston Pizza, well, owning Boston Pizza is like, well, I own Boston Pizza kind of thing. You're in a position where you don't feel like that, right? And that's only because of everything that you've gone through to get here, right? So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining me today, me and Chan.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I very much appreciated our conversation today. And is there anything else you'd like to say?
I mean, I think to close off, I think it's important that people be themselves. They don't need to showcase something different. And it's difficult sometimes. And I think that a lot of people want to be perfectionists. And what they don't realize is that perfectionist creation is putting a shield up, and people are blinded. And so they don't see the real you. And when they don't see the real you, you have no effect. And so to be able to have effect, you have to be vulnerable, and you have to be out there, and you have to put it all out on the table. And that's the only way to grow. And the only way for you to become something that you're meant to become. So I'll leave it at that, and that's been a big key learning for me.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that emanates from you. I definitely get that from you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Did you want to plug anything, like your not podcast, your social media or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
People see me, they see me. It's funny you bring up social media because I don't think there's anything on my social media feed that talks about Brown Social House.
Yes.
Because when people meet me,
for sure,
I don't want them to know that that's not me. I'm me. Get to know me for who I am, not what I do in life.
See, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah. Well, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. This was fun.
Man, this guy's the best guy ever.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for listening to the UrbanYEG podcast. I really enjoyed this episode, and I hope you did too. As always, you can go back and listen to every episode that we've done in the past on the platform that you're probably listening to on now. Also, go ahead and follow us on social media such as Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and go over to UrbanYEG.ca and sign up for our UrbanYEG newsletter. It's a monthly publication that comes out that will let you know about what we're doing, such as Insta Meets, other things that we're planning within the community. Also, there's going to be the blog posts are on there, and other things such as the insider tips. So once a month we'll have something that comes out that will be just tips and tricks from one of our local photographers in the city. So be sure to go and give that a check out. Thanks a lot for listening to this podcast, and look forward to the next one. Thank you so much.